Okay, so gracious and grace. Yeah, gracious and grace. You are doing electrical installation part what? It's part 2. And grace, you are also doing part 2. Okay, fine. I think the part 2s are no longer there. But in our time, we had craft part 2, then advanced and then ordinary diploma. So for you, you do a certificate and then you go for a diploma. Okay, so you are doing a certificate in electrical installation. That's all of you. Okay. So now, I want to share with you some things which you may never hear in your classroom at school, but which are useful when you come to the field. Are we together? Yeah. And I would like to share with you some part of my history in studying up to where I am. Not long ago, I was a student of electrical engineering at Kisiizi University. And I graduated last year. Last year in October, that's when I graduated. But I still consider myself as a student. Why? Because there are things that I'm learning which I never had the time to learn where? When I was in school. So, that means that learning never ends. So if you want to be a good engineer, then you have to be prepared to keep learning and learning and learning. Now, when I went to the university, and that was in 2018, when I decided that I should go for a bachelor degree, I had expectations. And like, I think you yourself when you are coming here, there are some things you expected. Some of the things you found they were there, some you didn't find, okay? So you had expectations. And maybe later you will tell me what your expectations were and to what extent they have been fulfilled. So I also had expectations. And my expectations were, because I had worked for actually 10 years before I went to for over 10 years. Because I did my ordinary diploma in 2007. So I started working, but later I felt something was lacking. So I kept praying to God and be open and opportunity and I went. So my expectations were, after reaching university, we are going to be studying electrical things. We are going to be studying high voltage. Machines, big heavy machines, and maybe manufacture them, you know? Yeah. And we'd be doing hydropower plant installations and what else. So I knew we are going to be studying very big things, right? And electrical. But to my disappointment, when I reached there, the calculations, what I found there was very interesting. Because in the first year, there is only one course unit that we did that looked electrical. And this course unit was called Electrical Systems 1. And it was sort of boring because it included things which I had studied in craft 2. You know, I did craft part 2. In the certificate level. So the Kirchhoff's laws, have you done Kirchhoff's laws? Then Ohm's laws, resistivity in science. Okay, so here I was at the university studying things which someone doing a certificate would choose. Surely, have I come to the university to study these simple things? So I felt like I was in a wrong place because my expectations were somewhere there. But well, I had to be patient and see. And of course I was ashamed to come back.
Of course.
Yeah. But the other course units had nothing to do with electrical. Because we did mathematics. And mathematics which had vectors. Remember those vectors which we were doing in senior 2? You remember? Vectors. And then they brought matrices. Sure, matrices.
Those of senior 3, senior 4. And we still started them in the certificate. We still started them.
Then probability and set. I was sure I have not come to the university to do these things which a senior 2 chap can do what? And understand. Then that was mathematics. Then another course unit we did was fluid mechanics. You know fluid mechanics? Things to do with water, how water behaves, those fluids, viscosity, what. Then we did mechanics, and we also did engineering drawing. Then we did communication skills. Did you do communication skills?
Of course.
Communication.
Engineering drawing.
Even engineering. But those are things which I didn't expect. Communication skills, and then we did thermodynamics. There was another course unit called thermodynamics. But this would be very relevant to mechanical, those who are doing mechanical engineering, to do with how engines operate and so on. And software. No, we didn't do software engineering. Yeah. Then we did Christian ethics as well. Christian ethics? And it was compulsory, you couldn't. So every paper in the first semester, in the first year was compulsory. And then there was another course called Introduction to Engineering. Introduction to Engineering. And that is actually one of the course units that I came to love as we progress. Because as it was being taught by some man, he was a big man, he was called Engineer Chamber. So he's the one who taught us that subject. And one thing I remember about him, he was punctual. Whenever he had a lesson, and his lessons would always be early in the morning, but no one would get to the classroom before him. He was there seated, looking at his, and this is, and he was teaching in a number of universities. But that was a very important lesson, which I actually need to know. Because when you come to the field, you don't come to learn those practical skills only, but you also need to know how you can perform and impress your employer. And as I told you, you don't, if you were an employer, you wouldn't want to employ someone who doesn't keep time, someone who delays things. You expect him to finish at 4, he's saying no. You expect him on duty at 8, he hasn't arrived. So that was one of the things I learned from him. He didn't tell me he was teaching, but I admired it. Because I'd come early and the man was already there, and he has a family, but he knows what he's doing is serious, and it is not good for students to come and find the teacher. But you would find some students come and they give excuses and so on. It was not a very good thing. So the reason I liked that course unit, which I said was called Introduction to, not even electrical engineering. Remember, I was pursuing an electrical engineering, but it was not mentioned anywhere. So it was Introduction to Electrical Engineering. So, and it was like history, and it introduced me to one of the men that I had learned in my primary days. During those days when we used to study things like industrial revolution. Have you ever heard of that? Industrial revolution, Renaissance. Have you ever heard of the Renaissance period? You have only heard industrial revolution. Then there is the Renaissance period, and there was also Protestant Reformation. Have you heard of that? No. when the Protestants broke away from the Catholics. Hey, have you ever heard of that? By this man called Martin. So we used to study those things in primary in our day, but I don't think they are still very so. Yeah. So we had studied about a man called Leonardo Da Vinci. Leonardo Da Vinci. And this is the man that captured my attention when Mr. Chamber was teaching that subject. And this man was an extraordinary man. He was almost everything. Let me say, he was an engineer. He was an engineer. He was a painter. He was very good at painting, making these sculptures. You see, like when you go to the monuments, those things. You look at you and draw you. So he was very good at that. He was a botanist. He was a philosopher. He was a mathematician. He was mention anything.
So for me, manufacturing and engineering, rather manufacturing than
Thinking.
Thinking about something.
And he was an inventor. He invented things. Actually, it is said that he's the one who drew the first plan of the helicopter. The first helicopter, he's the one who drew the plan, but he never lived to finish it. But people came and used his plan to develop a helicopter. And so he was so many things. He was also a chef. He was a musician. He was. And when yeah.
I wish I could be one.
I like that. That statement is very good. That statement is very good. And I'm going to tell you why. Yeah. So he was all that, and he did everything very well. And one of the things he used to do was, whenever he went, he would be having a notebook and a pen. So he would observe things and write notes. He would look at the birds in the air and look at it and try to ask himself, how does it fly? What makes it stay in the air? And then he would try to observe and make conclusions and write notes. And actually he died, but he left some of his notebooks. And I think when he was it, one of his, so those books had a lot of information that the scientists have actually used to develop things that they use today. Yeah. So I think one of his notebooks was preserved, and when was it? Was it in not long ago? Bill Gates, you know Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world. He bought one of his books, his notebooks, over how many billions, I don't remember them, but a lot of money just for his notebooks with his own handwriting, not even typed. So he bought it, the whole of that money. So he was amazing, and it's one, I can say that he's one of the most brilliant minds that the world has ever had. And what we need to know is that this is in relation to what Grace has said, that I wish I would be like that. So this man was a man like us. He was like you, Grace. But there are principles that he followed, that he practiced, that made him what he became. So he did not become that guy by accident. And that means if we do what he did, we can become like he became. We may not reach that, but we can have some part of him at least. At least we can become like part of him. And so he had principles that he applied. And Mr. Chamber introduced us to one of the books that explained principles that made Leonardo da Vinci the genius that he was. And this book was entitled How to Think Like Leonardo Da Vinci. When he mentioned it, those days I had not even known how to use YouTube and so on. I just learned it when I went to the university. So I said I must look for this book and read about this strange man. What did he do? How was he born? And yeah. So I went to Google, and fortunately I found a free book. That free book that talks about Leonardo Da Vinci, and the title was How to Think Like Leonardo Da Vinci. And in that book, the author describes the principles that Leonardo da Vinci used to become what he became. Become that influential. Up to now we remember him because of what he did. And there were 7 principles. And I'm going to now introduce you to one. And if you apply it, then you will become a better engineer. Of course, we need to know all of them, but we are not going to go through them now. But at least I want you to appreciate the first one, which also attracted me, gripped me, and I felt I should also try to follow in his steps and then share what I have learned and what is changing me, so that other people can also benefit. And I was like, so if you want to be a good engineer, you have to have that quality that I'm going to share with you. And this principle is called curiosity. Have you ever heard of that? It's in Latin. It's in Latin, and it's related to the word curious. Being curious. So Da Vinci had a strong sense of curiosity, and curiosity means eagerness to learn. You want to know. That desire there. And this author, let me read for you how he describes that quality. It is an insatiable, curious approach to life. Insatiable, curious approach to life, and an unrelenting quest for continuous learning. Okay, those are big words. I'm going to try and break them down to you so that you actually understand it. So he says it is an insatiable. When I was in O level, we used to study a subject called commerce. I don't think is it being taught at this commerce? We used to study commerce, and I did not study commerce myself. I did accounts because you could not do both. If you did commerce, then you didn't do accounts. If you did accounts, you didn't do commerce. So I did accounts, but I would hear students of commerce say something that has kept in my mind, that human needs are insatiable. Meaning that human needs are endless. You cannot satisfy them and finish. So for example, you are studying a certificate. After getting the certificate, you want to go for a diploma. After getting a diploma, you want to go for, after bachelor's, you want to go master's. After master's, you want some after PhD, they also want to do another PhD. Yeah? So then you are like poor. You want first you want food. You get food, then you want a house. You get a house, then you want a good car. Then you want a car. Then after you get a car, you want a good car. Then So insatiable means endless. That human needs that. So when we say insatiable curious approach to life, it means that you have an endless desire to know. Yeah. And an unrelenting quest for continuous learning. For continuous, and I told you I graduated, but I still consider myself as a student because there are things I'm learning. There are things I would never learn when I was, and this is the opportunity to do what? Because there is no pressure of exam. I know some of us, the mentality we have is when will I finish these exams and then I throw away the books. If you throw away the books, then you are throwing away your future. And you want to be like Leonardo Da Vinci. Grace is really desiring to be.
Sure.
Yeah, so if you want to be, at least have a portion of Da Vinci in yourself, then you should have that curious approach to life. And relentless. Relentless means not giving up. Not giving up. You go on and on and on until you get what you want. So, unrelenting quest for continuous learning. The word quest, I also learned it when I was in senior 1, I think. Senior 1 and 2. Where did you find it? Okay, composition. For me, I found it in CRE. Did you study CRE? Because there was a topic called Man's Quest for God. Hey, you remember? Man's Quest for God. So, and quest means looking for, searching, seeking. So man's quest, man's search for God. So when you have an unrelenting quest for continuous learning, it means that you have you don't give up on searching for knowledge. You want to continuously learn. And I think Amson will tell you that every Monday in the office we have what we call continuous professional development session, where we discuss things about the job, the work that we do, namely about our generator, about the transmission network, about the challenges that we face every day, and we see the science behind them and how we can solve them when they have problems. So curiosity is something that we are born with, because as a child, I think you remember, you wanted to know how.
You break a cup and you want to know what made this cup be like this. So you have to break it.
Yes, you see a candle burning, you want to touch and see whether it is.
Well, they normally say that she used to kill the rat and that.
Okay.
They got to know what was in the trap.
You want to know. So, but at some point, I think this curiosity is killed by our institutions of learning. Because you want to go this direction, don't read those things, they are not going to come in the exam. And yet for you, you feel you should discover more about that. And that is very bad. So that is the problem. So curiosity, everyone is born with it, and it is good. And it is that drive that made Leonardo Da Vinci to this way. Because for him, he developed it and it became so strong. But for us, we are born with it, but somehow the environment, the people around us, I think you need to know about the religious people. If you want to ask them, but who produced God? Is God a man? Don't ask those things. But so they are killing your curiosity, and you won't be able to discover answers to some of the things which you would actually have known. So that is bad. So religion, and for Da Vinci, for him, he questioned religion. The things that people believed, he questioned them, and they actually didn't like him because he was challenging them. Actually, some of the things that the religious people were telling the believers, they are not true. And for him, he questioned and questioned, how does this happen? Yeah. So if you want to be like Leonardo Da Vinci, then you just don't go by what the reverend or the pastor tells you. You go by yourself. And I actually think...
was also told.
Yes.
Pastors are told, teachers
Yes.
are also passed in schools. Maybe they put their yesterday or something.
So they also want to pass.
Yeah.
They are dead curiosity on you. Yeah. And I actually think that the preachers are the ones who need this quality even more. Because a preacher who doesn't question the Bible and the religious things will preach irrelevant sermons. But the things he's preaching, they are not the ones that people are being affected with. They are answering questions which people are not asking.
That's why scientists can become reverend. Yeah, they cannot, because they will still question the Bible.
Yes. Because the Bible, actually, there is a lot of truth in the Bible, but if you don't question, you won't come to it. You say, no, the pastor told me this is how it is done. The pastor told me there is one time my daughter asked me, we were watching a video of a meme, and so she was attentive and I didn't know what she was thinking. So after some time, I think like the next day, she asked me, Daddy, did Amin go to heaven? I was like, where did you get that? And she told me, at school we are told that when people do wrong, when they die, they go to hell. So did Amin go to heaven? I said, I don't know. And then she kept quiet and said, why don't you read books and find out? So that was curiosity actually at work.
She was eager to know what
Yeah.
happened to Amin after his death.
Yeah, and so when your child has that kind of question, you should encourage her or him to do that, because that's how they will discover the truth for themselves. So, curiosity. So like, for example, when I tell you that tomorrow we are going to replace the bearings of the turbine, what comes into your mind?
Why do you replace?
Why do you want to replace them? How do they look like? What are bearings for? What do they do on that system? How do you replace them? So that is actually, that is true curiosity. And then in the morning, you'll be the first one here because you don't want to do what? That is if your curiosity is strong, if it has not been killed. But if it has been killed, you just come there, you look, you don't ask any questions, and you go away. So that is, so curiosity will help you to learn. If you don't have it, you'll come. I used to tell some of, I think maybe you had me say this. Kwijoro mwoma, ukagaruka redi zrota. Aha. So if you don't have that curiosity, you'll come dry and you go away. You go away dry. So when I started reading that book and knowing more about Leonardo Da Vinci, that's when I discovered that the other seemingly irrelevant subjects were actually very important. And now I thank God that I studied like communication skills. Communication skills, you cannot be a good engineer if you don't know how to do what? How to communicate. Because you need to tell people what you know so that they can understand. You have to explain to those who don't know what you are doing so that they understand. So communication skills are key in every area of life, including. So those who put it on the syllabus, they are not stupid. But for me, I thought, this is wasted. Then mechanics, for example. Mechanics have to do with those bearings I was telling you about. The turbine itself is a mechanical thing. It's not electrical. It's not electrical. So you have to have an idea of mechanics if you are able to, if you want to be a good electrical engineer. Because you cannot have electrical when you don't have the mechanics to drive the generator. Then fluid mechanics I was telling you. It is about the properties of water, how the fluids behave and so on. And of course, you know hydropower, you have to know and use it.
Run the turbine, which is a mechanical, then to get electricity and become an electrician.
Exactly. So one of the principles that Leonardo Da Vinci followed was the belief that all things are interconnected. And everything is connected to something else. So you'll find that you go to study medicine, then at the end of the day you find that yourself doing mathematics because you have to calculate the doses of drugs. You go to study engineering, eventually come to mathematics because you have to calculate the current, the power, then you also come to find that even when you are an electrical engineer, you need to know some bit of accounts, also of business, because like now we are doing business. You have to know what you are selling, how much you are getting, are you making profit? Drawing, technical drawing.
So if you are making a plan of the house like this,
yeah,
to install it, you have to be having the drawing.
Exactly. And so that means everything is connected to everything else. And there is no knowledge that is useless. If you get an opportunity of learning something, you learn it, never know when you are going to need it. Like now I'm finding that actually I got a retake in fluid mechanics. But when I did the retake, I appreciate, I actually love it so much because it relates so much to what we are doing here. So, but before I think that's why I even got a retake because it's boring, excited to just do whatever. But,
It's not on you just because
yeah.
when you were doing the exams, our number one was asking about the diesel engine.
Yes.
This one that we have here, and you know that I came in the was April.
Yeah.
And I did my IT here.
Yeah.
And I went back to school. I remember I was in orientation. I came here with Porotas and entered that powerhouse.
Yes.
And he was showing me things, see, telling me this is this, see, you know, this is a diesel engine, it works like this. But I couldn't even put my mind there because I saw it as a Bible.
Yeah.
But on coming to exams, it was our number one. We regretted.
Yes.
He said it was this. I regretted, but I had nothing.
It was too late.
It was already
It was
late.
too late, yeah. So of course that is the lesson that we learn from experience. And sometimes you learn from other people's experiences. If this one made a mistake, you don't have to make it yourself to learn. You can learn from the experience of the mistake that your friends did. Yeah. So that is what I wanted to share with you. An insatiably curious approach to life and learning. So you have to have that endless desire to do what? To learn. You have to observe things and ask how do they happen. Like in that book we are told that Leonardo Da Vinci used to throw a stone in water. And you know when water, the pond is still, when you drop a stone, you know what happens? The ripples that go, and he used to do that and he would look at it, how does it happen? And he would look at it and reason and eventually he would come out with something out of that. So these things which are discovered, they are not discovered by accident. Someone has to do some work. It don't just come when you are sleeping. You have to put your mind to it. And actually, when you read the history of inventors, you will find that he would be looking for something, and then something else happens, and then he follows it and discovers something which he had not intended, but because of his curiosity, he discovers that. For example, a person who discovered electromagnetism. They were not after electromagnetism, but they were doing something and they saw, hey, what is attracting this? And then they tried to follow and investigate how, and eventually we have electromagnetic induction and we have electricity being generated. So I can stop that thing.